and welcome to another episode of Texas Brew School. I am Scooter Hendon, and I'm here with my good buddy.
I'm Brenden Stubblefield with Texas Brewing, Inc.
Yes, absolutely, a home brewer, opening a homebrew shop, and we're here to talk about adjuncts, which is not one of the ingredients that most people think about with beer. With beer, sort of people think about the four main ingredients being water, hops, malted barley, and yeast. But adjuncts are, especially a lot of the beer that people drink, there are a lot of adjuncts in those beers. And so, especially most people are familiar with Bud Miller and Coors, which I'm not going to open here. This is a Convict Hill Oatmeal Stout from Independence in Austin, which you'll find out why that makes sense with our adjuncts here in a second. But talk a little bit about,
Well, typically your Bud Miller and Coors, adjuncts, I guess you would say, have a negative connotation, just for the pure fact that these companies are really dealing with they want their profit margin to be really large. So what they do in order to make a higher profit on their beer, they actually use these different adjuncts such as your rice syrup solids or corn flakes, just so they actually boost the alcohol without actually adding any flavor or body for that matter.
Not corn flakes like Tony the Tiger, but
right.
Corn flakes is in flaked maize.
Right.
Just so that you're clear, you should have some beer. I know we've had a long beer. We got started a little bit early, but we still got to have a beer. So, but anyway, so that's something that makes the beer cheaper. It also makes it a little bit lighter, and they like to pitch like, oh, it has less calories. I guess that's one of the things that contributes to it as well. So they use that, but with craft beers, typically you're not going to find any of that stuff as far as corn and rice goes. So what you'll find mostly is malted barley. But in addition to that, we have adjuncts, and sort of the more glamorous adjuncts being something like an oatmeal, which would be flaked oats like this, which is featured in the Convict Hill Oatmeal Stout. And so the oatmeal kind of imparts sort of a little bit of a fatness on the mouthfeel and some other stuff too,
Most
right?
definitely.
Yeah.
It gives it a flavor, and if you paid attention to when we poured the beer, it actually looks almost thick, almost oily or slick. A lot of people call it slick on the tongue, or it gives it an actual slickness to the tongue when you drink it. So it also adds sugar as well, but it definitely, I think the most important part of the oatmeal is that it adds a mouthfeel and a flavor.
Right. Another really popular adjunct is wheat, obviously, and a lot of people are very familiar with wheat beers.
Right.
Those have a distinctive flavor, and they also add some sugars as well, right? So you have kind of malted and unmalted wheat. You were talking about a little bit about that earlier. Is unmalted wheat would be considered an adjunct, whereas malted wheat would actually be considered, not necessarily an adjunct.
Right. But typically your wheat beers, it definitely it adds a lot of protein to the beer. So if you get a wheat beer, they're usually going to be a little cloudy. Also, a lot of beer makers use wheat, just maybe a 5 or 10% of the grist, to just basically make a head retention. It actually contributes a lot to having a big, full, thick head.
Fancy Lawnmower uses, I think the St. Arnold, they use about, I think it's like 10%, they use 10% wheat.
And that would make sense. A lot of your Kolsch's do, your traditional Kolsch doesn't have wheat in it, but a lot of people do put wheat in it.
Right, exactly. So it just depends on what you're trying to do here. So, cheers a little bit of that. The oatmeal stout, there are a few, there are actually a lot of beers that use oats that people don't necessarily think about. Obviously, like oatmeal stouts being, I think, didn't Raj Snowmageddon don't they use some oats in that?
That was an Imperial Oatmeal Stout.
Imperial Oatmeal Stout, exactly. So I know also Southern Star, their Buried Hatchet Stout uses flaked oats as well. And that's, if you drink that beer, you'll kind of, if you taste it, especially how it feels on your tongue, it's got that slickness. It's got that little bit of that fatness that makes it a little bit more slick.
And that probably cuts the roast from that particular beer a little bit, and it gives it a little more complex flavor.
Yeah, absolutely. Another really popular one being, feel free to drink that as slow as you like. I'm going to go ahead and crack this thing, is Real Ale's Full Moon Pale Rye Ale, which uses rye, which a lot of people are sort of familiar with rye whiskey or something like that, but there are a lot of beers that actually use rye as well, this being one of them. And what would you say rye does to a beer?
Well, rye it really imparts a really unique flavor. You'll come across a lot of different beers Rye PA is a real trending, really high right now. For example, Hop Rod Rye is one from
Bear Republic.
Of course, I think this is a fantastic beer. Also, Jester King makes the Witchmaker Rye PA.
Yeah. Yeah, which is a delicious beer.
It's fantastic.
Very good.
But it adds a real spicy flavor to the beer. That's the best way that I can explain it. But it's very unique.
It also imparts a little bit of sugars,
right,
as well.
Most definitely.
Right. So there are kind of some zanier ingredients that that are considered adjuncts as well. Honey being one of them. Some people think of honey as just being something in mead, but there's a lot of beers that use honey as well. Kind of, what would you say? Kind of softens.
A lot of the we talked about this earlier. There's a difference between refined sugar and unrefined sugar. Unrefined sugars typically your honeys, agave nectar, or payoncillo, which is a Mexican unrefined sugar. And what that does is it actually adds a little flavor. If it's just pure 100% sugar, it'll ferment out 100%. Just adds alcohol, doesn't add any flavor. So that's one of the things that the Belgians do a really good job at. When you think of sugars added to beer, a lot of times it has a negative connotation, whereas in either Bud Miller Coors uses a lot of just to make cheap alcohol, whereas the Belgians use it to basically boost up their alcohol in their beers to 10, 12% or whatever, and it actually cuts the mouthfeel, so it's a smooth, easy drinking beer. It's not cloying.
So it's not so cloyingly sweet. I actually recently talked to Brock Wagner, a little interview with him, and he was talking about that. He used that with the Divine Reserve 11 to cut a little bit of the sort of that real sweet, so it wasn't so overly cloying. They used a little bit of the candy sugar with that.
Well, and that's the difference between, like you say, a barley wine and a Belgian triple. For example, a Belgian triple is a little easier to drink just because it doesn't have that thick, heavy mouthfeel.
Yeah.
So the Belgians are really good at that. Right,
definitely. Well, cool. Well, obviously the world of adjuncts is very wide, but we just touched on a little bit here. I guess we'll sign off. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Well, cool. Well, cheers, buddy. Scooter at texasbrews.org, and you can visit Stubby's website at
www.texasbrewinginc.com.
Absolutely. Cheers, guys.